My name is Amanda, and I was 34 when the doctor said those 6 terrible words. You have stage 2 lymphoma, Amanda. I called my parents immediately, hands shaking. They cut me off mid-sentence. My cousin Stephanie was getting married that weekend, and they were just too busy to talk about my health issues. 3 months later they called asking for $3,000 for her honeymoon. They had no idea my 8-year-old daughter Emily would be the one to finally make them understand. Let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever had to teach someone what family should mean. Before cancer rewrote my story, I had what most would consider a pretty good life in Boston. Not perfect but stable. I taught art at Westbrook Middle School, a job I genuinely loved despite the occasional chaos that comes with guiding 200 preteens through self-expression each week. My classroom was my sanctuary, walls covered in student artwork, the scent of acrylic paint and clay always lingering in the air. The school administration appreciated my work, and I'd just been nominated for Teacher of the Year the previous spring. Home was a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a triple-decker, nothing fancy, but filled with light, and just enough space for Emily and me. We had our weekend traditions: Saturday morning pancakes, shaped like whatever Emily requested that week, trips to the public library, and Sunday afternoon walks along the Charles River, when weather permitted. Emily collected river stones which she painted and arranged meticulously on her windowsill. She was my bright spot, wise beyond her 8 years, with her father's green eyes and my unruly brown curls. My relationship with my parents, Margaret and Richard, had always been complicated. They lived 3 hours away in an affluent Connecticut suburb in the same house where I grew up. My father had built a successful accounting firm, and my mother was active in their country club social scene. From the outside, we looked like the perfect upper-middle-class family, but appearances were deceiving. Since childhood, I had lived in the shadow of my cousin Stephanie. She was my mother's sister's daughter, only 2 years older than me, and somehow, always the center of attention at family gatherings. When we were kids, Stephanie got writing lessons while I got library books. When we graduated high school, Stephanie got a car while I got a department store gift card. My parents never missed any of Stephanie's dance recitals or tennis matches, but they had attended exactly 3 of my art shows throughout my entire school career. I had made peace with this dynamic years ago, or so I thought. I maintained a polite relationship with my parents, calling weekly and visiting on major holidays. They doted on Emily, at least sending her expensive gifts and asking about her grades. I was grateful for that much. The distance between us had subtly increased in the 3 years since my divorce from Patrick. They had never approved of him. A graphic designer wasn't stable enough in their eyes, but they also blamed me when the marriage fell apart. He had moved to Seattle for a job opportunity, and though he sent child support regularly, his visits with Emily had dwindled to twice a year. My parents thought I should have followed him west to keep the family together. They didn't understand that the marriage had been crumbling long before the job offer. The first signs of my illness were easy to dismiss. Teaching is exhausting work, so the fatigue seemed normal. The swollen lymph nodes in my neck I attributed to fighting off whatever germs my students brought to class. The night sweats I blamed on early perimenopause, though I was only 34. By the time I finally made an appointment, I had been ignoring symptoms for nearly 6 months. Dr. Kathleen Morris, my primary care physician for years, didn't hide her concern during the examination. "Amanda, how long has this lymph node been swollen?" she asked, her fingers gently probing my neck. "A few months," I admitted. "I thought it was just a lingering cold." She frowned. "And you've lost weight?" I nodded. "About 15 pounds, but I've been too busy to eat regularly." She ordered blood work and a CT scan using words like precautionary and routine, but I caught the worry in her eyes. Still, I told no one. No sense alarming Emily, and my parents would likely minimize my concerns anyway. In the week waiting for results, I found myself staring at Emily while she slept, counting her steady breaths, wondering what would happen to her if something happened to me. Patrick was 3,000 miles away, building a new life. My parents were emotionally distant at best. Who would be there for my daughter? I remembered how alone I felt during my divorce 3 years earlier. Patrick had announced he was taking the Seattle job with or without us. I had refused to uproot Emily from her school and friends. When I called my parents to tell them we were separating, my mother had sighed and said, "Well, we told you. Marrying an artist type was risky, Amanda. Men like that are never reliable." No comfort, no support, just a reminder that they had predicted my failure. The evening before my follow-up appointment, Emily found me sitting at our kitchen table, staring at a stack of medical insurance paperwork. At 8, she was perceptive in that unsettling way of children who have witnessed adult worry. "Are you sick, Mom?" she asked, climbing onto the chair beside me. I forced a smile. "Just a checkup tomorrow, sweetie. Nothing to worry about." She studied my face with those serious green eyes. "You look scared. Is it because you keep getting tired at the park?" My heart squeezed. Of course she had noticed when I needed to sit down during our weekend walks when I was too exhausted to finish reading our bedtime chapter. "I'm just running a little low on energy lately," I told her, smoothing back her curls. "The doctor is going to help figure out why." "I can help too," she said, with the absolute confidence of childhood. "I can make dinner sometimes. I already know how to make sandwiches and cereal." I hugged her, close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, praying that sandwiches and cereal wouldn't be the extent of her meals in the coming months. Number. Part 3. The Diagnosis. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday afternoon. I sat in Dr. Morris's office, a space I had visited numerous times for routine physicals and minor illnesses. Never before had it felt so small, so airless. She entered with a folder in hand, her usual warm smile replaced by a professional mask of composure. "Amanda," she said, sitting across from me, "I have your test results." She opened the folder, though I sensed she already knew every detail without looking. The CT scan and blood work confirm lymphoma, a type of blood cancer affecting the lymphatic system. The word cancer hung in the air between us. I had prepared myself for this possibility during sleepless nights, Googling symptoms until my eyes burned. Yet hearing it spoken aloud made my ears ring as if the word itself was an alarm bell. "Stage 2, she continued, her voice gentle but direct. "The good news is that this type of lymphoma typically responds well to treatment. I've already referred you to Dr. Rachel Bennett at Boston Medical Center. She's one of the best oncologists in the area." I nodded mechanically as she explained next steps, treatment options, statistics. I heard fragments, chemoradiation, possibility, success rates, side effects. My mind kept circling back to one thought. Emily. "Do you have someone with you today, Dr. Morris?" asked, noticing my vacant stare. "No. I came straight from work," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "I need to pick up my daughter from after-school program by 5. She glanced at her watch. "That gives us time to discuss any immediate questions you have." But my mind was blank. All the questions I had rehearsed evaporated, replaced by images of my 8-year-old daughter waiting for me at school, unaware that our world had just shifted on its axis. Dr. Morris wrote down Dr. Bennett's information, and the date of my appointment already scheduled for the following week. She squeezed my hand before I left, a gesture so kind that I nearly broke down right there. The drive home was a blur. Halfway there I pulled into Riverside Park and stopped the car. For 10 minutes I screamed and sobbed, pounding the steering wheel until my palms stung. Then I wiped my face, reapplied my lipstick, using the rearview mirror, and continued to Emily's school. She couldn't see me like this. I wouldn't let cancer take her childhood security along with my health. As I watched Emily climb into the car, her backpack almost as big as she was, a painful thought crystallized. I might not see her grow up. I might miss her high school graduation, her first heartbreak, her wedding. The unfairness of it burned in my chest. That evening, after Emily was in bed, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine I couldn't taste, and my phone in hand. Despite everything, despite years of emotional distance, my parents were still my parents. Surely a cancer diagnosis would break through whatever barriers had formed between us. Surely this would matter. I dialed their number, rehearsing how to deliver the news as gently as possible. My mother answered on the fourth ring, her voice harried. "Amanda, can this wait? We're in the middle of finalizing details for Stephanie's wedding this weekend. The florist just called with a crisis about the centerpieces." In the background, I could hear my father talking animatedly, probably on another phone line. I heard Stephanie's name mentioned several times. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking slightly, "I actually have something important to tell you." "Hold on," she said, not responding to the emotion in my voice. I heard her cover the receiver and speak to someone else. "Richard, can you tell them? We need the original peonies, not substitutions. The color scheme will be completely thrown off." "Mom," I tried again, louder. "I got some test results today." She came back to the line. "What kind of test results is this about Emily's academics? Because you know Stephanie's daughter Zoe is already in the gifted program, and they're the same age." The familiar sting of comparison momentarily distracted me from my purpose. "No, it's about my health. I've been having some symptoms and—" "Oh, Amanda, everyone has health issues," she interrupted. "I've had this persistent tennis elbow for months, but you don't hear me complaining. Your father's cholesterol is through the roof." I closed my eyes, gathering my strength. "Mom, please listen. I was diagnosed with lymphoma today. It's a type of cancer." There was a brief silence, and for a moment I thought I'd broken through. "Cancer," she repeated, her tone more puzzled than alarmed. "Are you sure? You always were a hypochondriac as a child. Remember when you were convinced you had appendicitis, and it was just constipation?" I gripped the phone tighter. "I'm not a child anymore, and yes, I'm sure. I have the CT scans and blood work to prove it." "Well," she said after a pause, "I'm sure it's not as serious as you think. These doctors are always so dramatic. What does this mean for Stephanie's wedding? You're still coming, right? You're doing the guest book table." The conversation continued in this vein for several minutes. Each time I tried to explain the diagnosis, the treatment plan, my fears, she redirected to the wedding, to Stephanie, to anything else. My father got on the line, briefly asked if I had a second opinion, then said he had to take another call. Finally, my mother said, "Amanda, we're really too busy right now, with wedding preparations, to discuss your health issues. Can we talk about this next week?" After the excitement dies down, I felt a cold numbness spread through me. "Sure, Mom. Next week." "Wonderful. Don't forget to wear that navy dress we bought you for Christmas, not black. Stephanie doesn't want anything somber in her wedding pictures." After hanging up, I sat motionless on the porch, the evening air growing chilly around me. I had just told my parents I had cancer, and they were concerned about what I would wear to their niece's wedding. A laugh bubbled up from my chest, edged with hysteria, followed by tears that wouldn't stop. That's how Emily found me 20 minutes later. She should have been asleep, but instead, she stood in the doorway in her unicorn pajamas, her face solemn. "Mom," she whispered, "are you crying because of the doctor?" I wiped my face quickly. "Honey, you should be in bed." She patted across the porch and climbed into my lap, though she was getting almost too big for it. "Did the doctor say you're sick?" In that moment I made a decision. I would not lie to my daughter. I would not pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. She deserved better than that. "Yes, Em," I said softly. "I am sick. It's called lymphoma, and it means I'll need to take strong medicine that might make me feel worse before I feel better." Her small hand found mine. "Is it like when Mia's mom got sick at school and lost her hair?" Mia was a classmate whose mother had battled breast cancer the previous year. The school had organized meal trains and fundraisers. I hadn't realized Emily had made the connection. "Similar," I acknowledged. "I might lose my hair too." Emily was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she straightened her shoulders in a gesture so like my own that it made my heart ache. "I'll help you," she said firmly. "I can learn to cook more things. And I can brush your hair until it falls out, and then I can help pick out scarves like Mia's mom had." Tears threatened again, but different ones this time. "That would be wonderful," I managed to say. "Did you tell Grandma and Grandpa?" she asked. "I tried," I said carefully. "They're very busy with Cousin Stephanie's wedding right now." Emily frowned. "But you're their daughter." Out of the mouths of babes. "Yes, I am." I agreed, not knowing what else to say. "That's okay," Emily decided. "We don't need them. We have each other." I held my daughter close under the stars, marveling at her resilience, her wisdom, her love. If my parents couldn't be there for me, at least I had this extraordinary child to remind me what family should be. The week after my diagnosis was a whirlwind of appointments and research. I spent nights after Emily went to bed hunched over my laptop, learning everything I could about lymphoma. Stage 2 was better than stage 3 or 4, I reassured myself. The 5-year survival rate was good. People beat this every day. My first appointment with Dr. Rachel Bennett at Boston Medical Center set the tone for the months ahead. She was younger than I expected, with a straightforward manner I appreciated. "We're looking at 6 cycles of chemotherapy, each 3 weeks apart," she explained, showing me the treatment plan. "ABVD is the standard protocol for your type of lymphoma. That's 4 medications given intravenously." "And the side effects?" I asked, notebook ready. Being prepared was the only control I had left. She didn't sugarcoat it. Fatigue is the most common. Nausea, hair loss, increased risk of infection. Some people experience neuropathy, a tingling in hands and feet. "We'll monitor your heart function throughout treatment, as one of the drugs can affect it." I wrote everything down, already planning how to manage teaching around treatment days and success rates. For stage 2, about 80% of patients achieve complete remission. Of those, about 75% remain cancer-free long-term. Odds I could live with. Had to live with. My next task was arranging childcare for Emily during my treatments. My neighbor Hazel, a retired nurse in her 60s, was a godsend. When I explained the situation, she immediately offered to watch Emily on treatment days and to check on us regularly. "My sister had lymphoma 10 years ago," she told me. "She's still doing line dancing 3 times a week. You'll get through this, Amanda." The school administration was equally supportive. Principal Janet Garcia arranged for a substitute to cover my classes on treatment days and reduced my teaching load to 4 instead of 6 classes. "Focus on getting well," she said. "Your job will be waiting for you." My parents hadn't called back. I sent them a text with the dates of my first chemotherapy session, not expecting much. The response came 3 days later. "Good luck with your treatment. Sorry we can't make it. Recovering from wedding festivities." The morning of my first chemo session, I woke before dawn, anxiety making sleep impossible. I checked on Emily, still sleeping peacefully, and left a note for Hazel, who would arrive to take her to school. Then, I drove myself to the hospital. The October sun, not yet risen, the streets of Boston quiet, except for delivery trucks and early commuters. The oncology ward was a different world. I was given a private room with a reclining chair, a television, and a window overlooking the city. The nurse Carmen inserted my IV with practiced efficiency. "First time's the hardest," she said kindly. "Bring someone with you next time. The hours go faster with company." I nodded, not telling her there was no one to bring. My coworkers had offered, but I couldn't ask them to miss work. My parents were 3 hours away, and uninterested. My friends from before the divorce had slowly drifted away as I'd focused on single motherhood. Emily was my world now, and she was too young for this sterile place, with its beeping machines and smell of antiseptic. The drugs entered my system one by one. First pre-medications to prevent nausea and allergic reactions, then the chemotherapy drugs themselves. Adriamycin, bright red like cherry Kool-Aid, bleomycin, vinblastine, dacarbazine, 4 horsemen coming to battle the cancer cells. I felt nothing at first, then a metallic taste in my mouth, then waves of nausea despite the anti-nausea medications. Carmen brought crackers and ginger ale, adjusted my blankets, checked my vital signs. The hours crawled by. I tried reading, then watching television, then simply staring out the window as the autumn day brightened and faded. By the time I was disconnected from the IV, 6 hours had passed. I was exhausted in a way I'd never experienced before, as if my very cells were tired. Carmen reviewed my home care instructions, the medications I would take over the next few days, the warning signs that should prompt a call to the doctor. "Do you have someone picking you up?" she asked as she walked me to the exit. "I'm fine to drive." I lied, not wanting to admit I was alone. She frowned. "Hospital policy requires someone else to drive you home after your first treatment. The medications can cause drowsiness." I called Hazel, embarrassed but desperate. She arrived 30 minutes later, concern written on her lined face. "You should have told me," she scolded gently. "I would have arranged to be here." The next 3 days were the worst. The nausea came in waves, making even water hard to keep down. The fatigue was crushing. Emily tiptoed around the apartment, bringing me glasses of water, drawing pictures to cheer me up. Hazel checked in twice daily, bringing simple foods I might tolerate. My parents sent a text on day 2. "Hope you're feeling better. Stephanie loved the serving platter you sent as a wedding gift." I sent weekly updates after that brief text, stating facts without emotion. "Second chemo session completed. Side effects manageable. Blood work looks good. Treatment continuing as planned." The responses when they came were equally brief. "Glad to hear it. Keep us posted." My coworkers organized a meal train. Every other day, someone would drop off dinner, saving me from cooking when standing for more than 10 minutes made me dizzy. The art teacher from the high school offered to take Emily to the Children's Museum one Saturday, giving me a full day to simply rest. By the 3rd week, my hair began falling out. First, a few strands on my pillow, then clumps in the shower. Emily found me crying in the bathroom, handfuls of brown curls clutched in my fists. "It's okay, Mom," she said, her voice small but determined. "We knew this would happen, remember? We can go shopping for scarves today." She helped me shave the rest off that evening, standing on a stool behind me in the bathroom, carefully guiding the clippers as I directed her. When it was done, my scalp pale and exposed, she kissed the top of my head. "You look like a warrior," she decided, "like those ladies in that movie with the spears." The next day we bought colorful scarves and a soft knit beanie for colder days. Emily insisted on trying on scarves too, in solidarity. The saleswoman, noting my gaunt appearance and Emily's protective hovering, gave us a 20% discount without being asked. As treatments continued, the financial strain began to mount. My insurance covered 80% of the medical costs, but 20% of astronomical sums was still significant. Copays, medications, special foods I could tolerate, gas, driving to and from appointments, it all added up. I dipped into my meager savings, then started putting expenses on credit cards. Through it all, my parents remained distant. They sent a Christmas card with a group photo from Stephanie's wedding. There I was in the corner wearing the navy dress, as instructed, my face already thinner than it should have been, my smile forced. Emily was not in the photo. The wedding had been adults only. Looking at that photo, at my parents beaming beside Stephanie in her designer gown, something broke inside me. I had been fighting so hard, fighting cancer, fighting to maintain normalcy for Emily, fighting to keep teaching part-time through exhaustion and pain. And my own parents couldn't even be bothered to call and ask how I was doing. Emily found me sitting on the kitchen floor, the Christmas card torn in half beside me. "Mom," she asked, kneeling beside me, "what's wrong?" I couldn't protect her from everything. That was the hard lesson of these months. "I'm just sad that Grandma and Grandpa aren't helping us during this hard time," I admitted. She nodded sagely. "They're not very good grandparents," she observed. "Or parents either, I think." I laughed through my tears. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart," she said with complete seriousness. "I just didn't have to show it before." She helped me up from the floor, this child suddenly carrying so much responsibility. "I made your tea with honey," she said. "And we can watch that baking show you like." As we curled up on the couch together, I realized something important. We were managing. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But Emily and I were facing this crisis together, and somehow, we were getting through each day. The support I craved from my parents had been replaced by the generosity of friends, colleagues, and even strangers. Maybe that was enough. 3 months into my treatment, the doctors were cautiously optimistic. The tumors were shrinking, my blood counts were improving, and though the side effects hadn't lessened, I had developed routines to manage them. I still taught 3 days a week wearing colorful scarves that my students complimented. Emily had adjusted to our new normal with remarkable resilience, taking pride in her role as my helper. It was a Tuesday evening in late January when my parents called. Seeing their number on my phone screen was so unexpected that I almost didn't answer. Emily was doing homework at the kitchen table, while I prepared a simple dinner of soup and sandwiches, one of the few meals I could still manage to cook. "Hello," I answered, trying to keep surprise from my voice. "Amanda, it's your mother," came the familiar voice, as if we spoke regularly, instead of barely communicating for months. "Hi, Mom. Is everything okay?" I couldn't imagine why else she would call. "Everything's fine," she said briskly. "Your father and I wanted to talk to you about something. Is now a good time?" I glanced at Emily, who was watching me curiously. "Sure, I have a few minutes before dinner. I'll put you on speakerphone, so your father can join the conversation." There was a shuffling sound, then my father's voice. "Hello, Amanda, how are you feeling?" The question, which should have been asked months ago, caught me off guard. "I'm managing. The treatment is difficult, but it seems to be working." Good, he said vaguely, as if I'd mentioned a minor cold. "Listen, Amanda, we're calling because Stephanie and Brian are planning their honeymoon." I waited, not sure what this had to do with me. My mother continued. "They've had their hearts set on Bali, 2 weeks at a beautiful resort. It's quite expensive, of course, but they've been saving." "That sounds nice," I said cautiously. "I'm sure they'll have a wonderful time." "Well," my father jumped in, "the thing is they're a bit short on funds. The wedding cost more than anticipated, and Stephanie's hours at the boutique were cut back recently." An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. "I'm sorry to hear that." "We're putting together a family gift," my mother explained, her voice taking on the persuasive tone she used when serving on fundraising committees. "Everyone is contributing to help make their dream honeymoon a reality. We thought you might want to participate." I gripped the counter for support. "Participate how exactly?" "We're asking family members to contribute what they can," my father said. "Your Aunt Susan gave 1,000. We thought perhaps you could manage 3,000. The room seemed to tilt slightly. $3,000, I repeated, certain I had misheard. "Yes," my mother confirmed cheerfully. "It would be such a meaningful gift. Family needs to support family, Amanda." I looked down at my hands, thin and pale, with bruises from IV needles and blood draws. I thought of the stack of medical bills on my desk, the credit card statements. I was afraid to open the second mortgage I was considering on my condo. "Mom, Dad," I said slowly, keeping my voice low so Emily wouldn't hear. "I'm in the middle of cancer treatment. I have thousands in medical bills not covered by insurance. I've had to cut back my teaching hours. I can barely afford groceries some weeks." There was a pause then, my mother said. "Well, we all have expenses, Amanda. When your father had his gallbladder surgery last year, we didn't ask for handouts." "A gallbladder surgery is not the same as 6 months of chemotherapy," I said, my voice rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. "There's no need to get defensive," my father said. "If you can't manage 3,000, perhaps 2,000, even 1,000 would be appreciated." "I can't believe this," I whispered. "I really can't believe this is happening." "What's not to believe?" my mother asked, sounding genuinely confused. "Stephanie is family. This is her once-in-a-lifetime honeymoon." And I'm fighting for my life. I finally snapped loud enough that Emily looked up in alarm. I turned away, lowering my voice again. I have been going through hell for months. I've lost my hair, I vomit for days after each treatment. I'm constantly exhausted, and I'm terrified of leaving my daughter motherless. And you haven't visited once, haven't offered any help, barely even called to check how I'm doing. And now you have the audacity to ask me for money. Really, Amanda? My mother scolded. There's no need for dramatics. From what you've told us, your cancer isn't even that serious. You're still working after all. I'm working because I have no choice, I hissed. Because I have a daughter to support and medical bills to pay. We raised you to be more generous than this, my father said, disappointment heavy in his voice. Stephanie has always been there for you. When I demanded, name one time Stephanie has been there for me when I needed help. Silence. That's what I thought, I continued. I'm sorry, but I don't have money to give for Stephanie's honeymoon. I'm using every cent I have to survive cancer and take care of my daughter. I think you're being selfish, my mother said coldly. After everything we've done for you. Something snapped inside me. Years of always being second best, of seeking approval that never came, of making excuses for their behavior. It all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. Especially since my diagnosis. More silence. That's right. Nothing. You've done nothing. So please don't call me selfish when I refuse to go into further debt to fund a luxury vacation for my cousin, who hasn't even sent me a get-well card. Amanda, my father began, but I cut him off. I have to go. Emily and I are about to have dinner. I hung up before they could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and anger. When I turned around, Emily was standing right behind me, her homework forgotten. Grandma and Grandpa wanted you to give them money, she asked incredulously. I sighed, wishing she hadn't heard. Not for them, honey. For cousin Stephanie's honeymoon. Emily's face scrunched in confusion. But, you're sick. And we had mac and cheese 3 times last week, because you said it was on sale. Sometimes adults make choices that are hard to understand, I said diplomatically. Emily wasn't having it. They're being mean, she stated flatly. They should be helping us, not asking for money. I couldn't argue with her logic. You're right, I admitted. Their behavior isn't fair or kind. Do they even know how sick you really are? She asked. Have they seen you after chemo when you can't get out of bed? No, I said softly. They haven't. Emily was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then her face brightened with sudden inspiration. What if we showed them? What if they could see what the doctors say about your cancer? What do you mean? Dr. Bennett could write a letter explaining everything, she said excitedly. All the medical stuff they don't understand. We could give it to them, and then they'd have to believe how serious it is. I started to explain why that wouldn't work, how people who didn't want to understand rarely changed their minds, but something about Emily's hopeful expression stopped me. She needed to believe we could fix this, that her grandparents could be better people if they just had the right information. That's an interesting idea, I said instead. Let me think about it. As we ate our soup and sandwiches, I considered Emily's suggestion from all angles. Perhaps there was something to it. Not because I thought a letter would suddenly transform my parents into the supportive family I needed, but because it might be time to confront this situation directly, for Emily's sake as much as my own. That night, after Emily was asleep, I sat at my computer drafting an email to Dr. Bennett. I explained the situation as objectively as I could and asked if she might consider writing a brief letter outlining my diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis. To my surprise, she responded within an hour. I'd be happy to help. This isn't an unusual request. Sometimes family members need medical facts presented clearly to understand the gravity of a situation. Let's discuss at your appointment this week. As I closed my laptop, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anxiety about confronting my parents, doubt that it would make any difference, but also a small persistent spark of hope. Not that they would suddenly become the parents I had always wanted, but that perhaps, just perhaps, they might finally see me. The next morning I found Emily sitting by the phone in the living room, the cordless receiver in her hand. When she saw me, she quickly put it down. "What are you doing up so early?" I asked, wrapping my robe tighter around my too thin frame. "Nothing," she said, but her eyes darted away from mine. Emily was many things, but a good liar wasn't one of them. "Emily," I said gently, "were you making a phone call?" She sighed, shoulders slumping in defeat. "I was going to call Dr. Bennett's office." "What? Why?" I sat beside her on the couch, concern washing over me. "To ask about the letter," she admitted. "I heard you typing last night and I saw Dr. Bennett's name on your computer. I wanted to make sure she writes it." I was momentarily speechless. My 8-year-old had been about to call my oncologist independently to ensure the letter was written. The lengths to which this child would go to protect me were both touching and heartbreaking. "Sweetheart," I said, pulling her close, "I've already emailed Dr. Bennett. She said we can talk about the letter at my appointment tomorrow." Emily relaxed against me. "Good. She'll tell Grandma and Grandpa the truth and then they'll help us instead of asking for money." Her certainty gave me pause. I needed to manage her expectations without crushing her hope entirely. "Emily, I want you to understand something. Even with a letter from Dr. Bennett, Grandma and Grandpa might not change how they act. Sometimes people are set in their ways, especially adults." She considered this, her forehead wrinkled in thought. "But they should at least try. That's what you always tell me, that I should try even when things are hard." Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. The next day at my regular appointment with Dr. Bennett, Emily insisted on coming along. Usually Hazel watched her during these visits, but Emily was adamant. "It's my plan too," she argued. "I should be there." Dr. Bennett welcomed Emily warmly, offering her a juice box from a small refrigerator in her office. While a nurse checked my vital signs, Dr. Bennett spoke to Emily with the same respect she showed adult patients. "Your mom tells me you had an idea about writing a letter to your grandparents," she said. Emily nodded seriously. "They don't understand how sick Mom is. They asked her for money for a vacation, when we can barely afford food sometimes." Dr. Bennett's eyebrows rose slightly, but her professional demeanor didn't waver. "I see. And you think a letter from me might help them understand?" "Yes," Emily said confidently. "They need to know from a real doctor." After my examination, which showed the treatment was continuing to be effective, Dr. Bennett brought up the letter again. "I've been thinking about what might be most helpful," she said, turning to her computer. "I'd like to write something that explains your diagnosis, treatment plan, and prognosis in clear terms. I'll also include information about the physical, emotional, and financial impact of cancer treatment. Would that address your concerns?" "That would be perfect," I said gratefully. "Thank you for doing this." "It's part of my job," she replied. "Helping patients navigate not just the medical aspects of cancer, but the social and personal ones too." She typed efficiently occasionally, asking me questions about my specific side effects or financial situation. Within 20 minutes she had drafted a comprehensive letter that was factual, yet conveyed the gravity of my condition without being alarmist. "I'll print this for you now," she said, "and also email you a copy. Feel free to share it however you think best." As the printer hummed, Emily asked, "Can I be the one to give it to them?" Dr. Bennett looked to me for guidance. "We'll see, honey," I said noncommittally. "Let's read the letter first." The letter was perfect. It began with a formal introduction of Dr. Bennett as my oncologist, followed by a clear explanation of my diagnosis of stage 2 lymphoma. It detailed my treatment protocol of 6 cycles of ABVD chemotherapy, with a breakdown of common side effects. I was experiencing severe fatigue, nausea, hair loss, and increased risk of infection. It explained that while I was continuing to work part-time, this was increasingly difficult and was only possible due to accommodations from my employer. The financial section was particularly impactful, outlining the approximate costs of treatment, even with insurance coverage, and the additional expenses, Cancer patients often face transportation to appointments, childcare, special dietary needs, and lost income from reduced work hours. Finally, the letter addressed my prognosis, while Dr. Bennett emphasized that my type of lymphoma had good response rates to treatment. She made it clear that I was facing a serious life-threatening illness that required all my physical, emotional, and financial resources to fight. "Is this what you had in mind?" Dr. Bennett asked, as I finished reading. "It's exactly right," I said, emotion, making my voice thick. "Thank you." Emily read parts of the letter, struggling with some of the medical terminology, but understanding enough to be satisfied. "This will work," she declared. "They have to understand now." On the drive home, Emily brought up her earlier request. "Can I give them the letter, Mom, please?" I hesitated. "Emily, I'm not sure that's a good idea. These conversations might be difficult." "I'm not a baby," she insisted. "I've been helping you through all the hard stuff already. I can handle Grandma and Grandpa." I thought about it more that evening. There was something powerful about the idea of Emily being the one to deliver the letter. My parents had always doted on her, even when they were dismissive of me. Perhaps seeing their granddaughter standing up for her mother would make an impact that nothing else could. After 2 days of consideration, I made a decision. "Okay, Emily. We'll go visit Grandma and Grandpa this weekend, and you can give them the letter. But we need to prepare for any reaction they might have." Emily was ecstatic, already planning what she would say. I was far more apprehensive. This visit could go poorly in so many ways. Yet something told me it was necessary, not just for my parents to understand my situation, but for Emily and me to stand together and advocate for ourselves. We made the 3-hour drive to Connecticut that Saturday. I had chosen a day when I was between treatments and feeling relatively strong. Still, the journey was taxing, and I had to stop twice to rest. Emily kept watch over me, offering water and snacks from the bag she had packed herself. As we approached my parents' neighborhood, the houses grew larger and more impressive. Manicured lawns stretched before colonial-style homes with luxury cars in circular driveways. My parents' house, a stately 4-bedroom with white columns flanking the entrance, looked exactly as it always had, perfect, pristine, and somehow cold despite its grandeur. "Their house is so big," Emily observed, as we pulled into the driveway. "They have all those rooms, and it's just the two of them." I hadn't thought of it that way before, but she was right. My parents had space and resources to spare, while Emily and I were crammed into our small apartment counting pennies for groceries. No one came out to greet us, though I had texted to let them know we were coming. I rang the doorbell, Emily standing straight-backed beside me, Dr. Bennett's letter clutched in her small hand. My mother opened the door, surprise evident on her face despite my advance notice. "Amanda, Emily, we weren't expecting you until later." "We made good time on the road," I said, forcing a smile. "May we come in?" She stepped back, allowing us to enter the marble-floored foyer. "Your father is in his study. I'll get him." Emily looked around wide-eyed at the crystal chandelier, the ornate mirror, the fresh flowers in a silver vase. "Everything is so fancy," she whispered to me. My father appeared, reading glasses perched on his nose, a Wall Street Journal folded under his arm. "This is unexpected," he said by way of greeting. "We wanted to see you," I replied, a half-truth at best. My mother gestured toward the living room. "Shall we sit down? I can make tea." We followed them into the formal living room, where white couches and glass tables created an atmosphere more suited to a magazine spread than family gatherings. Emily and I sat together on one couch, my parents across from us. "You're looking well," my mother said, though her expression said otherwise. I knew what she saw: my pale skin, the colorful scarf covering my bald head, the weight loss evident in my hollow cheeks. "I'm between treatments right now," I explained. "This is about as good as it gets these days." An awkward silence followed. My father cleared his throat. "If this is about our phone call the other day, we've already arranged for Stephanie's honeymoon gift without your contribution." Emily's small hand found mine, squeezing it in support. Actually, I began. We came because... I have something for you, Emily interrupted, her voice surprisingly steady. She stood up, the letter clutched in both hands now. It's from Mom's cancer doctor. My parents exchanged a glance. As Emily walked across to them, her chin held high. It explains everything about Mom's cancer, she continued. How sick she really is, and how hard the treatment is, and how much it costs. She held out the letter to my father, who took it with a puzzled expression. Emily, I'm not sure what this is about, but... Please just read it, she said, her voice smaller now, but still determined. Please. My father unfolded the letter, my mother leaning in to read alongside him. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. I watched their faces as they read, saw the subtle changes in expression, first skepticism, then confusion, and finally, as they reached the sections on prognosis and financial impact, something that looked almost like shame. My father's hands began to tremble slightly as he turned to the second page. My mother's face had drained of color. When they finished reading, my mother sank back into the couch without a word, the letter still clutched in my father's unsteady hands. For what felt like an eternity, no one spoke. The only sound in the room was the steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the corner, marking seconds that stretched into an unbearable silence. Emily returned to sit beside me, her small body pressed against mine in solidarity. Finally, my father lowered the letter to his lap, his hand still visibly trembling. I didn't realize, he said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. Your mother and I thought. We assumed. You assumed what? I asked quietly, not accusatory, but genuinely wanting to understand. He passed the letter to my mother, who was sitting motionless, her face ashen. We thought you were exaggerating. You always were sensitive, even as a child. Sensitive. The word hung in the air between us. Dad, this isn't about being sensitive. This is cancer. This is chemotherapy. This is me fighting for my life, while also trying to care for my daughter. My mother finally spoke, her voice small. The letter says you're having trouble paying for groceries. Is that true? I hesitated, pride warring with honesty. Yes, some weeks are better than others, but between medical bills and reduced work hours, things are tight. Why didn't you say something? My father asked, genuine confusion in his voice. The question unleashed something in me that had been building for months, for years, perhaps for my entire life. I did say something. I told you I had cancer. I told you I was struggling. I told you I couldn't afford to contribute to Stephanie's honeymoon because of my medical bills. You didn't listen. You've never listened. That's not fair, Amanda, my father started, but his protest lacked conviction. Isn't it? I leaned forward, Emily's hand still in mine. Let me tell you what's not fair. It's not fair that when I was diagnosed with cancer, your first concern was whether I would still attend Stephanie's wedding. It's not fair that in 3 months of treatment, you haven't once offered to visit to help with Emily, to contribute financially, or even to call regularly to check how I'm doing. My voice was rising now, years of hurt bubbling to the surface. It's not fair that my entire childhood was spent in Stephanie's shadow. It's not fair that my accomplishments were always secondary to hers. It's not fair that my 8-year-old daughter has shown more compassion and support during my illness than my own parents. Emily squeezed my hand, an anchor in the storm of emotions. We had no idea things were this serious, my mother said weakly. You seem to be managing. I had no choice but to manage, I exclaimed. What was the alternative? Fall apart. I couldn't do that to Emily. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Do you know who's been helping us? My neighbor Hazel, who watches Emily during my treatments. My colleagues who organized a meal train. The school administration who reduced my teaching load. Complete strangers who donate to the cancer support fund at the hospital. Everyone except the 2 people who should have been first in line to help their daughter. My father's face had reddened, whether from shame or anger I couldn't tell. We're not mind readers, Amanda. How are we supposed to know how bad things were when you barely tell us anything? Because you're my parents. The words burst out of me. Because when your child tells you they have cancer, the appropriate response is to drop everything and be there for them. Not to ask if they're still coming to a wedding. Not to question if they're exaggerating. Not to ask them for money months later. I paused, gathering my thoughts. Remember when I was 10 and had pneumonia? You took 2 weeks off work to care for me. Remember when I broke my arm at 16? You drove me to every physical therapy appointment. What changed? When did I become less important to you than Stephanie, than social obligations, than anything? My mother was crying now, silent tears tracking through her perfect makeup. My father looked older suddenly, the lines in his face deeper. We thought you wanted independence, he said finally. After the divorce, you seemed determined to do everything on your own. Wanting independence doesn't mean not needing support during cancer, I replied, my voice softer now. It doesn't mean not needing parents. Emily, who had been quiet throughout this exchange, suddenly spoke up. When Mom gets really sick after chemo, I have to bring her water and crackers because she can't get out of bed. I'm only 8. I'm supposed to be the kid, not the mom. Her words landed like a physical blow. I saw my parents wince, saw them truly look at their granddaughter perhaps for the first time. Not as a cute accessory to family photos, but as a child bearing adult burdens. Oh, Emily, my mother whispered. I'm so sorry. We both are, my father added, and for once he sounded sincere. I don't need your money, I said firmly. That's not why we came here today. I don't need you to fund Stephanie's honeymoon, and I don't need you to pay my medical bills. Then what do you need? My father asked, sounding genuinely lost. I need you to be my parents, I said simply. I need you to care that I'm sick. I need you to ask how I'm feeling, and actually listen to the answer. I need you to remember that I'm your daughter, not just Stephanie's less important cousin. The silence that followed was different from before, not cold and awkward but heavy with realization. We failed you, my mother finally said. We've been terrible parents. Yes, I agreed, not cruelly but honestly. You have. My father set the letter on the coffee table between us. Can we try to do better? Is it too late? I looked at Emily, whose face showed both hope and skepticism. That depends, I said. Are you willing to make real changes? Or will this be like every other time I've tried to talk to you about our relationship, where things improve for a week, and then go back to the way they always were? We want to change, my mother said, dabbing at her tears. Tell us how. First, I need you to understand that this isn't about money. When you called asking for $3,000 for Stephanie's honeymoon, it wasn't just that I couldn't afford it. It was that the request showed such a profound lack of understanding about my life, my struggles, my priorities. They nodded, looking appropriately chastened. Second, I need you to respect that Emily and I are a package deal. She's my priority, and anyone who wants a relationship with me needs to value her too. Not just with gifts at Christmas, but with genuine interest and involvement. Of course, my father said quickly. Emily is our granddaughter. And third, I continued, I need consistency. Not grand gestures followed by disappearance. Regular calls, actual conversations where you ask about my health and listen to the answer. Visits that don't revolve around Stephanie or country club events. My parents exchanged a look, some unspoken communication passing between them. We can do that, my mother said. We want to do that. My father reached for his checkbook in his jacket pocket. Let us help with the medical bills at least. It's the least we can do. I held up a hand to stop him. I'm not taking your money today. This isn't a transaction. If you want to help financially in the future, we can discuss it, but only after you've shown that you're serious about being present in other ways. He looked surprised, but replaced the checkbook. All right, what would you like us to do first? Listen, I said simply. Really listen when I tell you what this experience has been like. Ask questions. Try to understand. And so, for the next hour, I talked. I told them about the day of diagnosis, the fear that had consumed me. I described the physical pain of treatment, the humiliation of losing my hair, the constant worry about Emily's well-being. I shared the terror of facing mortality at 34, of wondering if I would see my daughter grow up. I explained the financial realities, the exact costs of medications, the burden of co-pays, the impossible choices between food and heating some months. They listened, really listened perhaps for the first time in decades. They asked questions that showed they were trying to understand. They didn't minimize or compare or deflect. When I finished, Emily added her perspective. What it was like to watch her mother suffer. How scared she had been. How she had tried to be brave and helpful. By the time we fell silent, the afternoon light was fading from the windows. My parents looked shell-shocked, as if seeing a reality they had never imagined existed. We had no idea, my father said, his voice rough with emotion. We've been so wrapped up in our own world and appearances and status and what the country club crowd thinks. We've been terrible parents, my mother repeated, and terrible grandparents. Yes, I agreed again, but you don't have to stay that way. 6 months later, I sat in Dr. Bennett's office receiving the news I had fought so hard to hear: remission. The cancer had responded to treatment, and while I would need regular monitoring for years to come, the immediate battle was won. Congratulations, Amanda, Dr. Bennett said, genuine warmth in her voice. You've been through hell and back, but you did it. I touched the soft fuzz of new hair growing on my head, still sparse but definitely there. We did it, I corrected her. I had a lot of help. On the drive home, I reflected on the journey of the past 9 months. The physical recovery was still ongoing. I tired easily, and certain foods still tasted strange, due to the lingering effects of chemotherapy. But I was back to teaching full-time, my students thrilled to have their art teacher fully present again. What surprised me most was the parallel journey of emotional healing. The confrontation with my parents had triggered changes I hadn't dared to hope for. True to their word, they had started with small but consistent efforts. Weekly phone calls became daily check-ins. They asked detailed questions about my treatment and actually remembered the answers. When I had my final chemotherapy session, they drove 3 hours to be there, bringing Emily from school to join the small celebration the nurses had organized. My mother had joined an online support group for families of cancer patients, educating herself about the experience from others who had been through it. My father had contacted the hospital's financial services department, and with my reluctant permission arranged to pay off the remaining medical bills. But more meaningful than the financial help were the changes in their behavior toward Emily and me. They started inviting us for weekend visits that didn't revolve around larger family gatherings. They attended Emily's school science fair, beaming with pride, as she explained her project on the effects of chemotherapy on the body inspired by my treatment. Most surprisingly, they had reached out to Dr. Bennett, directly asking for a meeting to better understand my ongoing health needs. The oncologist later told me she had been impressed by their genuine desire to learn and support. They asked really good questions, she had said. Not just about the medical aspects, but about how they could be emotionally supportive during your recovery. The relationship remained a work in progress. Years of patterns couldn't be erased in months, and there were still moments of tension, still times when old habits emerged. But the effort was consistent, and that mattered more than perfection. What had changed most profoundly was my own perspective on family. Through this ordeal, I had discovered that family wasn't just about blood relations, it was about the people who showed up when it mattered. Hazel, my neighbor, had become like a grandmother to Emily, continuing their special relationship even after my treatment ended. My colleagues had demonstrated a depth of caring I hadn't known existed in the workplace. The online cancer support group I had joined provided understanding that only fellow survivors could offer. This chosen family had sustained me when my blood relatives couldn't or wouldn't. They had shown me what unconditional support looked like, and in doing so, had changed my definition of family forever. Thanksgiving that year was the first holiday we spent at my parents' house since the confrontation. The initial hours were awkward, everyone hyper-aware of the change dynamic. But by evening something had shifted. We sat around the dining room table, not in the formal dining room, but in the cozier breakfast nook sharing a meal my mother had prepared with Emily's help. "I never really thanked you properly," I said during a lull in conversation looking at my daughter, "for being so brave through all of this, for coming up with the letter idea." Emily shrugged, embarrassed by the attention. "I just wanted them to understand," she said, glancing at her grandparents. "You were wiser than all of us," my father said, reaching across to squeeze Emily's hand. "It took an 8-year-old to teach us how to be a family." My mother wiped away a tear. "We're still learning," she admitted, "but we're trying." As winter turned to spring and spring to summer, my strength continued to return. My hair grew back curly and somehow darker than before. I took fewer naps, needed fewer accommodations. Life gradually reclaimed a rhythm that felt almost normal, though forever changed by the experience of serious illness. One bright June day, almost exactly a year after my diagnosis, I attended Emily's end-of-year presentation at school. She had created an art project titled My Mom's Journey, a series of drawings depicting our experiences over the past year. The images were startlingly perceptive. Me receiving the diagnosis, Emily helping me after chemo, the two of us facing my parents, and finally a drawing of our entire family, including grandparents, standing together beneath a rainbow. My parents sat beside me in the audience, my mother clutching tissues, my father recording the presentation on his phone. When Emily finished speaking, they were the first to stand and applause, genuine pride radiating from them. Later that evening, as Emily played in the backyard of my parents' house where we were spending the weekend, my father joined me on the porch. "I keep thinking about something you said during our confrontation," he said, his voice thoughtful, "about how it shouldn't take a cancer diagnosis for us to care about you." I nodded, remembering the raw emotion of that day. "You were right," he continued, "and I'm sorry it took something so drastic to wake us up. But I'm grateful too, in a strange way. Not for your illness, never for that, but for the opportunity to repair what was broken before it was too late." "Me too," I said softly, though I would have preferred a less dramatic wake-up call. He laughed, a genuine sound I had rarely heard growing up. "Your mother and I were talking last night about how much we've missed over the years, how many opportunities we wasted being focused on the wrong things." "We can't get that time back," I acknowledged. "But we have now, and the future." "Yes," he agreed, "we do." Cancer had taken much from me, my health temporarily, my sense of invulnerability permanently. But it had given me unexpected gifts too. It had shown me my own strength, my daughter's remarkable resilience, and the capacity for people to change when confronted with what truly matters. I had learned that family, true family, isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by love and presence. That forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, but about creating space for a different future. That sometimes the deepest wounds can, with care and attention, become the foundation for something stronger than what existed before. As I watched Emily laughing in the yard, her grandparents now joining her game, I felt a sense of peace that had nothing to do with remission, and everything to do with the healing of old wounds. We were all forever changed by what we had endured together, but perhaps changed for the better. I realized that while cancer had been the crisis that exposed the flaws in our family, it had also created the opportunity for genuine connection. Crisis reveals character, not just the character of others, but our own as well. In standing up for myself, and for Emily, I had discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed. In offering my parents a path to reconciliation, I had found the grace to build something new from the ashes of disappointment. Have you ever had to confront a family member about their hurtful behavior? How did you find the courage to speak your truth? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about family resilience and healing. Remember that sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most meaningful changes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find the strength to face whatever challenges come your way with honesty and hope.